Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to another professional match of StarCraft 2. Now what I got for you today is a really exciting game of Terran versus Protoss, and we'll go over why that is in just a little bit. Spawning here in the top right hand corner of 16-bit LE and playing with the blue Protoss probes, we have none other than Team Liquid's Mana. And his opponent spawning all the way in the bottom left-hand corner. And this map, by the way, is rather big. He's playing with the red Terran SCVs. He's from Mexico and he goes by the name of Special. So this is a game that was recently played at WCS Austin. And if you were to ask me before WCS Austin who would win in a matchup between Special and Mana, I would probably 100% of the time put my money on Special. I mean, the thing is, Special has always been considered to be one of the strongest players with the Terran pieces outside of South Korea. When we talk about Terran players outside of South Korea, we think of names like, for example, Hero Marine, names like, for example, Kalazur, names like, for example, Euthermal, and then, of course, also Special. And I might very well put Special at the very top of that list. However, Mana is a name from, in particular, 2011, 2012, 2013. He's always been around, he's always had decent results since, but he hasn't really made that insane of an appearance ever since WCS Austin wrapped up just a couple of days ago. All of a sudden, Mana smashed the competition, and he ended up getting second place, going down 4-2 against Serol in the Grand Finals. Now, I haven't seen this match right here myself yet. I heard it may very well be one of the best tournament matches, so I am really excited to figure out what both of these players have got in store for us. So what I've learned from Mana from watching him play some of the games at WCS Austin is that he really loves his Phoenix openers, which is really quite exciting, because Phoenixes, I mean, some players make them to maybe get rid of a couple of medevacs, or maybe you make them just to sort of like control your opponent, but usually you don't play them super aggressively. And he also loves sticking to his gateway-based armies, something that a lot of people have also started switching out of in the recent meta. So I'm excited to see what this game is gonna be all like. I mean, I'm still gonna be leaning to Special here, because, I mean, Special has always been such a monster. He's very good at playing that super standard bio-based army. As a matter of fact, I believe Special has been training over in South Korea for a very long time already. I think he's been there for over a year or so. Don't quote me on that, but regardless, Special does play a very Korean-esque style because of that, and they love their multi-pronged harass, they love their, big pushes across the map, they love playing rather aggressively. Looks like we do see that starport coming up here for Mana. Nothing all too crazy right there, but the standard, for example, is to go for that Oracle play initially. Oracle's, of course, very good with Revelation, also just to simply keep track of your opponent's army positioning. You can do a lot of damage to, for example, Widow Mines and that kind of shenanigans. I would always say that Oracles are sort of like your go-to, well-rounded unit in the early game of Terran versus Protoss, and I guess Protoss versus Zerg as well, for that matter. You see them quite a bit even in PvP. Basically, Oracles are great for scouting, for harassment, for keeping your bases safe, for expanding towards a third, that kind of stuff. Now, Mana did already go for that in-base expansion. We can see the same thing happening right here on the other side of the map. If we have a quick look at how this map plays out, it's called 16-bit LE. It's a map that recently got added with the new ladder season in StarCraft 2. There's an easy-to-take in-base expansion. However, what I usually found in my own games on this map is that as soon as you take the third over here, and then the fourth over in that area, or some players like to take this as the natural and this is their third. Doesn't really matter, but as soon as this base is taken and the in-base expansion, things get a little bit awkward, because in particular Terran players can really easily drop in between those locations, and obviously War Prisms are gonna be evenly, or just as useful in those kind of scenarios as well. So I'm excited to see how players are gonna play this one out, because a lot of pro gamers end up vetoing 16-bit LE. More barracks now coming up here. We do see that beautiful scout here actually by Mana. He did go for that Phoenix already, and he is now following it up with more Phoenixes. Right? So Phoenixes are interesting units. For example, you can technically counter everything in the early game with just Phoenixes if your micro is good enough, right? Say, for example, you see a Widow Mine burrowing right here. If you're fast enough, you can actually lift it up before it finishes the burrow animation, and you can actually pick it up and kill it really easily. However, obviously, things get very complicated if your micro is not absolutely perfect. Basically, all Terran units in the early game sort of counter the Phoenix, but the Phoenix is really good at countering everything as well. It's one of those units that becomes substantially better if your micro is good as well, right? You have to be very active, you have to be continuously moving them around, you have to be on point with your army positioning and the way you're reading the matchup. Now, both players sort of playing a relatively passive game so far. Already a third Nexus now coming up here for our Protoss player in blue. Special setting himself up for what could be more or less like a timing attack right when Combat Shield and Stimpack finish up. They will finish right around the same time. We don't see the third command center rather just yet. I'm expecting that one to go up in just a little bit, or you could choose to go with additional barracks. We'll have to keep an eye out on that production tab. Mana though, going for a really greedy third base. And obviously if this goes unpunished, right, he's gonna be in a phenomenal spot just because his income is gonna be quite a bit bigger. And he keeps on adding on more Phoenixes. It's so interesting, right? I mean, you can't really go for any kind of drop player right now if you're a Terran player. Obviously, he does have 2 Medivacs available right now, but look. The Bio Army moves out, and then all of a sudden, these Phoenixes swoop in. Now, usually Cyclones take about 2.5 years to kill for Phoenixes. I guess if you've got enough, it is gonna be a good option. Nevertheless, though, Special did decide to put all of his Marines in the Medivacs. Little bit risky, but obviously he did know where those units were located. Now, did he just... Yeah. Mano just actually mass recalled all of those Phoenixes upon realizing that there were no Marines on the other side of the map, and he's now waiting for these Medivacs. Look at this, right? The star sensors are tingling. Boost, though, is activated, so that does mean that these Marines will still be able to drop off. And this is where things get really tricky. All of a sudden, you're dealing with a whole lot of Marines close to your Naturals mineral line. There are a couple of gateway units here already, but is it going to be enough? 4 probes already end up dying. Looks like they're going to be fighting right now as well. And it does look like with those Medivacs going down that the majority of those Marines will also be picked up with relative ease. That's still 7 probes, though, in exchange for 16 Marines and then also 2 Medivacs. Not the worst of traits, but I would have liked it a lot better if Protoss didn't already have a third up and running. That's why it's definitely not the most efficient trait, right? All right. I mean, every second that goes by right now, Protoss is gonna continuously mine more and more resources. Once again, though, and this is what Special loves to do, right? It's one of those Korean-esque ways of playing. They continuously play much more aggressive than you would have expected from many other players, right? They basically just continue pushing. He will set up apparently a bit of a Widow Mine drop. Very interesting. He's not scared to go out on the map, right? Even though he knows that there's Phoenixes roaming everywhere. And that's because he's pushing with another force here out on the map. Now, this must maybe, you know, make those star senses tingle once again on Mana. Because he's like, wait a second, that's not a whole lot of Marines whatsoever. Yeah, exactly. I was hoping he was going to send those forward, but not quite the case. Here we go. Widow Mines are going to be dropping down into that mineral line. Decent splitting here, but that is 13 probes in just a matter of seconds. And while these Marines will be chased back, that was the damage that Special was looking for. Beautifully done there. I was actually looking at that army positioning from Mana, and all of a sudden he decided to fly his Phoenixes up into the main base. I thought maybe he realized that something was not quite right, because that was a relatively small army to push with. But apparently Special's distraction strategy did work out, and while Mana is currently hunting for that Medivac, and it does look like he will be able to get it as well, he did just end up losing a really big amount of probes. And this is what these top-of-the-line Terran players will do. Usually they will try and get a small advantage and then run away with the victory. It's really difficult to give your Terran opponent a small lead, because catching up is always going to be it's always going to be the harder task. Usually Terrans in particular have a really good grasp on the matchup in the sense that they can continuously harass and, you know, just continue pushing here as well. Probes will be pushed off the line. Looks like that single photon cannon will indeed scout where those units are located. The probe actually helping out there as well. This one should eventually go down too. Now another Medivac does end up going down though, and everything considered, I mean, a lot of units have died, but yeah, this is definitely going to go in favor of the Protoss player in blue. Even though the supply, though, definitely ahead of Special. This is actually something that Mana mentioned in some of his interviews. He says, well, I feel like I'm playing really strong, and apparently he has been practicing harder in 2018 than he's ever done before. He feels like he's playing well, and he feels like he's doing a good job. But he also feels like he still has got a lot to improve upon. Apparently, he mentioned that he's got a lot of idle probes all the time, or he's just not, you know, playing as perfectly as he would like to. And that's one of the things that he is currently apparently working on, just simply that macro. And I would say, as far as macro goes, I mean, Special is spot on. Doesn't really miss anything here. Maybe not quite at the level of for example, someone like Innovation, but there's no denying that he's very, very good. Widow Mines, though, are going to be meant here defensively now that apparently the War Prism had arrived. Those 2 Vikings, though, apparently managed to snipe it already. big chunk of Marines and Marauders was stimped forward here just to try and clean up this handful of Zealots, but they will be able to do exactly that. Great pickup there by Special, and actually love this as well, right? Subtle little moves like this, having the SCV on the high ground, or rather on the watchtower, is super helpful. At the same time, though, there is another medevac here inside of that main base. Phoenixes once again come up, but you can see they provide a lot of value here to that Protoss army. Really, you know, just being good from the early game all the way up to the mid game. Late game, they will usually fall off, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're just gonna like patrol them around or something, and you know, try his very best to just pick up as many drops as he can. But there's no denying that so far they have been extremely valuable, very, very cost efficient. Now, there's a big Terran army now moving across the map. We already did see the switch right here to both Disruptors as well as Colossi. Interesting decision by Mana, actually, to make both. Usually we see players make one of the two. I guess making one Colossus sort of forces out like 8 or so Vikings. We do already see that Liberator switch right now coming up for Special, but we may very well have a big engagement happening, but here we go. This is where things get really tricky. The Phoenixes were waiting there to try and intercept that drop from happening, but even though they did get 2 medevacs there, I mean, the majority of that Terran army managed to unload. Now the Vikings are arriving here as well, and all of a sudden, right, we saw the Widowmine bait on this side, and Mana is caught with his pens down, and he now will end up losing that Nexus. At the same time, a small Terran force will also start moving forward, but apparently, even though Special is not quite going to be capable of unloading all of his units, he's once again actually going to go back around and unload the units inside of that natural expansion here of the Protoss player once again. Don't know exactly how valuable this is going to be. There's still obviously that Colossus. It's very good when it comes to dealing with these kind of armies. Obviously, these Marauders, though, they have been increased as far as their damage output goes against units like, for example, the Colossus, quite substantially. 2-2, though, about halfway done here already for our Terran player, and he is going to be now making that switch towards Liberators. I really like this. Liberators, of course, they will basically counter everything on the ground, and you know, there's no denying that pretty much everything that the Protoss has at this point is going to be ground-based. I mean, obviously, we did see a couple of Phoenixes, but they're not particularly great against, for example, Liberators. 4th base will now also be acquired by Special. This is going to be a planetary fortress, and he's already so Marauder, so Marauder focused. Then again, though, here come the big balls of doom. Those Disruptors dealing a massive amount of damage, and then mass recall to get away from there. Now, apparently, oh my god, 1 hero sentry. That was really cute. I mean, it's still going to die, but that was still really cute. He was trying to come up there to try and prevent that army from losing. Oh man, the 1 Marauder. This is a root Marauder. I can't believe he's done that. That was such a cute little play, though. But look at this, right? Here's that big Protoss ball. I mean, I still really like the position that Special is in, but there's no denying that Mana, while he was significantly behind earlier and he was not in a great spot, he's actually still got a very menacing force, though we all know the strength of that Protoss death ball, right? Here we go. He's going to try and jump on the planetary fortress. One of the medevacs will end up going down immediately. There's so many Disruptors available. They're going to be able to continuously throw forth those balls. One of the ghosts now coming in from the back as well. Target firing down the planetary fortress, but the hug of love from those SCVs will keep it at full HP here in just a couple of seconds. Decent engagement there from Mana. But jumping on a planetary, I mean, it's always a very difficult thing to do. Once again, medevacs immediately moving out on the map. I love this position, though, on that Widowmine, right? He's not just getting a lot of value here with potential pickups, right, for units that walk over it, but it's also just simply scouting so very much. Another base will now be taken here on the left-hand side already in anticipation of potentially losing this base. Once again, though, here we go. Mana is going to make a move forward, using those Disruptors for beautiful zoning here as well. Massive connections, and that all of a sudden, ooh, 1 Disruptor coming in from the back here, but that all of a sudden made it much more difficult for those Liberators to deal the damage. At the same time, though, a double medevac drop will go down once again. That base here, I mean, in that tucked away position, I mentioned it in the earlier stages of this game, it's just not meant to live. Very difficult to defend if you are the Protoss player. Once again, a blink right there to try and intercept those medevacs. Looks like it won't be happening, and while the majority of these Terran units will be picked up, 10 probes ended up dying there as well as that Nexus. Mana trying to see if he can potentially close this game out right here, right now. He's got a very menacing force. Once again, though, those Disruptors are providing so much value, right? The micro is on point here by Special, but it's so very difficult to get the proper damage in. More and more disruptors will now also be produced, actually. Now, these medevacs not done just yet. Stalker's trying to see if they can deal some damage. One of those medevacs will eventually end up dying. Mana did get himself now one War Prism here across the map too, but still, this Terran army is not gonna slow down, and Special is multitasking like a champ, defending all of his bases absolutely phenomenally, just making sure that he gets rid of all of those units, and now he might even get a medevac for his trouble as well. There we go. Beautiful play here by our Terran player, but he did end up losing a substantial chunk of his supply, and there's no denying, right, that while he sort of slowed down this Protoss player, he's not really got the standing army anymore to continue onwards with the harassment, right? That's what I mentioned earlier with the continuous damage output that Terran players really have. He's gonna have a really hard time right now continuously pushing. And it may very well be Mana who gets to have that job right now, which I'm sure he much prefers, rather than dealing with all of those Terran units on his side of the map. He gets to, he gets to push himself. Now that the Terran army is not as big as it once was, he's gonna need all of those units at home, and that, makes medevac drops so much harder to achieve. Still though, that's a lot of Liberators. Making the decision to push in that can easily end the game. Do they have their ranged upgrade yet? No, they do not. Another planetary fortress right here on the left-hand side. Disruptor balls will move forward, those purification novas, but the Liberators, I mean, they provide a lot of value. And it does mean that eventually... Well, oh my god, did it just... Oh man, these players are so hard to read, right? I mean, they're trying to outposition each other beautifully. Once again, though, a couple of disruptors... setting themselves up for a nice little push there, but Special playing that nicely, playing that patiently. He will end up losing quite a big chunk of his units, though. Oh my god, Disruptors provide so much value in these scenarios. At the same time, though, even though Special hasn't really had that big of a standing army, I love the fact that he still decided to split up part of it to go for a push here on the right-hand side. That does mean that defensive Protoss units will be forced to warp in here as well. And while they will be cleaned up, at the same time, though, the Stalkers found a lot of value. They're now actually moving all the way around. They got themselves a couple of those Liberators, and all of a sudden, right, those Disruptor balls dealing so much damage to not only the SCVs, but also that Planetary Fortress. Planetary Fortress does end up dying. And look at this, right? Mana found himself in a phenomenal position. Multitasking really well, trying to defend all of his bases. This time around, keeping that Nexus alive, using the reinforcing Warpins as well as that Colossi and Disruptor on the other side of the map as well. It's so difficult to use use Disruptors rather as a defensive unit, just because if you look away and your Disruptor ends up blowing up your own army. Life can become very difficult. But look at this. Special now finds himself with his back up against the wall. He's effectively got one base really mining. The other ones are very rapidly running out. And this one also doesn't have a lot of life left in him anymore. Here we go, though. That's still a lot of Disruptors. Of course, these Ghosts are going to be able to provide a lot of value as well. A lot of medevacs trying to come in from a distance. And that Planetary Fortress, man, providing so much value. I love the positional play here by Special. Really trying to make his strategic positions, I suppose. Like, for example, this location right over here. And morph those bases into Planetary Fortresses. It's a really smart way of playing, because Protoss has a hard time maneuvering around that. It's very similar to chess in a way. Couple of medevacs though, and a whole bunch of units once more trying to see if they can potentially make their way towards this newly acquired base by our Protoss player. One hero Colossus, a laser giraffe trying to see if it can potentially deal some damage as well. But I mean, Mana is smelling blood. He's smelling blood and he's throwing away a lot of units. Right? He's wanted to close out this game for a little while. He knows that he's got his opponent contained on a relatively small amount of bases, but he really cannot push up into that high ground. He needs to be careful. This can easily go in favor of Special if he looks away for just a little bit. Now Special is trying to see if he can once again kill that base. Base hasn't even really been retaken, and that does mean that these medevacs will unload on a couple of probes that are long distance mining. At the same time though, Special also once again moving a part of his army on the right hand side of the map. Mass recall will be forced, however, and the reinforcing units here inside of that main base, as well as the laser giraffe itself, will be able to deflect the double medevac drop. Man, I'm not gonna lie. Top level Terran versus Protoss has become such a sick matchup as well. There's so much variety. Players are splitting off their units in several different angles. I don't even really know where they're spending their time, right? It's really difficult to decide what engagement you want to focus on, but you can't really let one slip through the cracks. If you make one mistake and you don't look at one of the engagements for just a little bit, you're obviously gonna be in a lot of trouble. Once again though, these Stalkers and this Protoss Death Ball, I suppose, it's looking to see if it can close out the game, but that Planetary, it's providing so much strategic support. And here we go, Special, he's found himself a bit of an opener. He's now going to be able to go after that Nexus. those upgrades of those Terran units really coming into play. 3-3, very, very good. And there we go. Nexus falls in just a matter of seconds. Stalker's trying to see if they can intercept these medevacs, but I think they're a little bit too far away. At the same time, though, one Colossus will be target fired down in the main base as well. Special microing his heart out, really getting so much value. Still, he's got to be careful. I don't know if he's got these units queued, but this could become an absolutely massive pickup here for Mana. He does get one of the medevacs. Second one just barely manages to live, but these units are now they're just sort of stuck right here on the right-hand side of the map. Special not once again unloading, right? And even though, I mean, Mana was in a great spot here earlier, right? Special with a relatively small army getting so much value, right? He's really good in these kind of scenarios, getting so much value out of this small army. At the same time, though, big Terran pool trying to make a move across the map. Big amount of Protoss units ended up blowing up there as well. There's still a lot of those disruptors as well. At the same time, those medevacs once again found a bit of a safe haven. Liberations once more trying to pick up as many of those Protoss units as they can. But still, that army from the Protoss turns out to be a little bit too strong. Mana getting a lot of value out of his disruptors balls. Still great micro here by Special, but I think he will be forced to retreat here for the time being. At the same time, though, Special once again boosting forward here on the right-hand side of the map. He's gonna unload his units in a very strategic position once more, but it does look like there's a little bit too much Protoss here for him to feel comfortable unloading. And even though Mana is not gonna try and take this base over here, I mean, Special could just go back around once again. He did see that Nexus going up. He has a lot of medevacs out on the map, and he's pressuring like no tomorrow. This is the way to play Terran Bio. It's extremely difficult, don't get me wrong, but it's so effective. I mean, I thought that Special was out of this game like 5 minutes ago, but he's still in this. Not in a great spot, though. Mana is slightly ahead when it comes to the supply count. A lot of these Terran units are also very low in health. You gotta keep in mind, a big chunk of the Terran army is also out on the map. Still, another base has now been taken here by Special on the left-hand side. A lot of reinforcing Terran units will obviously help out here as well. Oh, once again, those liberation zones. Purification Nova, rather, just dealing so much damage. He's got to be careful. Mana using that right now to try and deal damage to his, you know, to that Terran army, the best of his abilities. Once again, oh my god, he's sending the Purification Novas through his own force. Couple of SCVs end up dying there. At the same time, though, once again, that Terran Bull has moved on the right-hand side of the map. They're going to unload and maybe potentially pick up another one of those Nexi. The majority of those Protoss units ended up going down, trying to take care of one of those command centers as well. They successfully managed to do so, but there's no denying that all of a sudden Special is actually ahead when it comes to the supply count. Dude, Special is actually now ahead when it comes to the supply count. Oh my god, what's going on? This is the kind of game where I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, you know what? I'm never gonna be able to, you know, to micro 4 engagements at once. It is so very difficult to achieve something like this. Once again, though, the Terran army, I mean, it's got to be very careful. One Disruptor Ball and it's over, right? One Purification Nova and this game is done. Also, there's no medevacs here available with the exception of this one, but a lot of those Terran units are indeed at a very low amount of hit points. Mana looks like he ended up getting maybe one or so of the medevacs there. The rest of them will be deflected here for the time being, or at the very least they've got no more units left over. But Special has now secured another base here on the left-hand side of the map. Right, this is going to be a planetary fortress. He's once again got a lot of mining here happening. Mana is sort of forced into this all-in scenario because he's got very little income at this point in the game. This is basically the army that he's got, and this is what he plans on winning the game with. He's got to be careful. Planetary fortress may very well be killed just barely before it finishes morphing in. Woo, those Purification Novas, though, just dealing so much damage and just zoning away this Terran army phenomenally. 18 SCVs ended up going down there. Once again, great split there by Special. I actually think that Mana's army is just a little more favorable at this point. Well, still a couple of those Liberators come up right now as well. Those Ghosts being super helpful, but the one that was left over does get picked up. And those Purification Novas, man, they are non-stop. He's not going to slow down. Trying to pick up those disruptors is Special, but this is very difficult to read right now. Another Nexus will be taken here by Mana. But every single second that goes by, right, it means that another Purification Nova will happen here in just a little bit. And here we go! The Zealots charge forward. Liberators sieging up here as well. The Stalkers try to target firing them down immediately. It may... Oh my god, no way! Mana actually looks like he will be able to smash that Terran army. Beautiful micro there. And Special is forced to GG out. Dude, no, dude, that was so sick. That was such a good game. Such a sick back and forth professional game of Terran versus Protoss. That was really, really nice. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. And if you want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as future videos go up. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you in the next one.